Here. Okay.
Yes, this one you will find. We have another session now before 5 o'clock.
Yes.
But once you're sitting here, right?
Oh, if you can, if it works from here.
Yes, it
So,
will.
yes, it
will,
would be
yeah.
better.
Latte? So you have the screen there.
Okay.
I will try to adjust.
Just to be sure it works from here.
Yeah, you see the mouse?
Oh, okay. Yes. It's a little bit far, but it's fine.
Unfortunately, yes. So
Okay.
just go to F5.
Yes.
And
Okay.
it will come on
Yeah.
top there, and will also be shown here.
Okay. And
Yeah.
you switch from the
We
spanner?
will put it on the
Yes,
screen,
okay.
exactly. So we will take it off the screen because of if it's like this. Because we don't want the people to see that you're working.
Okay.
Yeah?
Okay.
So once it's free, we will put it back on screen.
Okay.
Yeah? So easily we will put it for you on screen.
Then
F5.
you will switch. Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
And this one, yes, the mouse. Okay. Yes.
So I think
I
just to
saw
s-
it.
I
Okay.
think just to support you, just to see like that when you are getting the question and you're about to answer, we will quickly open your presentation. You just go through the slide and that's it.
Okay.
It's the easiest thing we can do.
Okay.
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 Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you.
See you. Get away. Where would you like to
3
sit?
or 4?
5 and 4.
I think my 4.
Yes. Would you like to sit here? Very right on the street.
Screen? Yeah, I'm forced to be answering questions.
Good afternoon, everyone. Scientists, technologists, students, academicians, member state delegates, welcome to the panel named as Virgin 83 Member States Investment. And we are continuing now the installation and the certification of all the stations. And over the past 20 years, you can see from the map, more than 90% of the station infrastructure has been completed, installed, and 294 stations already have been certified by the cooperation of the member states. We expect from you, scientists, technologists, and your kind cooperation and support to make any progress to open the door to complete the remaining 16 stations of IMS. We have only 16 stations remain for the completion of all the system. And we have been really expecting your encourage and help and support to complete the remaining 16 stations of the IMS. Even though it's not completed 100%, the International Monitoring System network detecting almost all the events of the DPRK, all the nuclear tests, very successfully, but we still need some feeding technically, scientifically, and we wanted to have this opportunity during the SnT. We wanted to collect the new ideas, the new innovative solution, engineering solution, and also the new tools which you have been expecting to good and facilitate for the international monitoring system. This panel also focuses on innovations and advancement of the monitoring of the international monitoring system. I'm going to introduce the panel members. First of all, I would like to thank to them for their acceptance to be the panel member of this important panel. And I'm going to start from Kamiya-san. Noriko Kamiya from Japan. She is simply, if I say, earth scientist. She has PhD in earth science. She has been seismic analyst. She has worked for Japan Meteorological Agency long years, and also she was lecturer in the Earthquake Research Institute, and also importantly, she has been with us some years in Vienna. She has worked for Japan Permanent Mission, responsible for the CTBT issues. Thank you very much, Noriko.
Thank you.
She has been always the supporter of the CTBT, and now she has been doing the job in Earthquake Research Institute as an associated professor. Do you want to say something as a remarks?
Okay.
If you want.
Yeah. Could you show my presentation, Kamiya? Thank you, Nurujan-san, for inviting me to this panel discussion. My name is Noriko Kamiya from Earthquake Research Institute, the University of Tokyo. I'm a seismologist, but my specialty is seismic activity and information for disaster prevention. But I have been involved in the field of the CTBT for about 20 years as a seismic analyst, researcher, and a diplomat in Japanese mission in Vienna. But today, I would like to talk my opinion as a scientist. As you know, Japan is only one country which was attacked by atomic bomb. So many people hope for a realization of a world without nuclear weapons. The Japanese government also supports and promotes the entry into force of the treaty and the verification regime for the CTBT. And there are 10 IMS facilities in Japan, 1 PS, 5 AS, 2 radionuclide stations, 1 radionuclide laboratory, and 1 infrasound station. Like as many other countries, Japan's financial situation is not good, but the Japanese government strives for taking care of IMS facilities in Japan. In Japan, Japan Weather Association is operating seismic and infrasound stations as NDC-1, and Japan Atomic Energy Agency is operating radionuclide facilities as NDC-2. And they have high skills, and they are making independent analysis and providing information to Japanese government. And regarding today's theme, IMS monitoring technologies, I think they are working very well. For example, in nuclear tests by North Korea in September 2017, the information provided by the CTBTO was very useful. At the time, I was watching the seismic waves at Japan Meteorological Agency, and I noticed that there was another event after about 8 minutes after the first main event. Actually, JMA was confused about it, but we could refer the information from CTBTO's Executive Secretary, Dr. Rashina Zelbo's Twitter, which provided us their information very quickly. And I think there is no more neutral and reliable organization than CTBTO in detection of nuclear tests. So I think it's necessary to maintain this verification regime and the CTBTO with the cooperation of member states. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Noriko. And I'm just past to Johnson Guralp. Since he is the founder of the Guralp System Limited in 1987, and his name is very well known by mostly the earth scientists. He has developed many instruments, seismic instruments especially. He is the really innovative and bright engineer, Johnson Guralp, today together with us. Thank you very much, Johnson, accepting to be member of this panel. And I would like to give you some floor if you want to say something about CTBTO.
Nurjan, thank you very much, first of all, for inviting me to this panel, to be a member of the panel. It really is an honor to be here, to be able to inform you of some of the things I've done in the past, starting with, particularly with instrumentation for CTBTO. I personally have been involved with installation of quite a number of the borehole stations that CTBTO is currently using. And this starts with Sonseca in Spain, and I've personally installed instruments, Matsuhiro Instrumentation, the borehole instruments there. Again, I was permanently there to be able to ensure that the instruments were installed and operating satisfactorily. In a similar way, the network in England, where it's the IMS station, EKA, Guralp System has been involved in ensuring that the instruments not only been installed but also been operating over many years. In addition to installation, I have been involved with CTBTO in terms of providing a particular type of transfer function for the seismometers, for the broadband seismometers used. I've named it whilst I was doing my PhD as a hybrid sensor. It's a particular type of response where it combines acceleration response with velocity output. And the same type of response was used actually in the USA National Seismic Network in 1980s. So I have been extremely, what I would call, honored to be able to provide such instrumentation. And what I would like to now do is maybe Is that okay? Okay. Hello. Is it behaving? Yeah. I will be talking about borehole instrumentation, possibly the future of borehole instrumentation, to answer some of your questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Johnson. And I'm just passing to Valérie Flavin from CAA France. She is original electronic engineer, and long years she has been in CAA France, and she was taking care of the French national instruments, especially radionuclide system deployment. She was the officer in the laboratory, and she was the head of the laboratory of CAA and responsible for deployment of the seismic, infrasound, and radionuclide stations. Now she is the head of CAA DAM, responsible, again, the geophysical networks from sensors to the data analysis. Thank you very much, Valeria, for your really kind acceptance to be part of this panel. Do you want to say something about CTBT? No? Yeah, okay. Okay, then I will pass to Roberto Betancourt. He is from Venezuela. He is naval officer of Venezuela and from the Venezuelan Naval Academy. He has got his PhD from Manchester University in the field of policy research in engineering, science and technology. And from the 2017, he is the president of the Venezuelan Foundation for Seismological Research, which we have been collaborating to maintain and operate and run the two auxiliary seismic stations there, and collaborating with CTBTO to exchange of training and the common research with CTBTO. Thank you very much, Roberto, for accepting to be a member of this panel. Do you want to say something about?
Well, thank you very much for inviting me and to be seated here among this prestigious panel member. And it's a great pleasure to address and discuss the future of the IMS. And later on, we'll discuss further in detail as a member of the Naval Forces and as well as a policy, research, and engineering researcher. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you very much, all. Then I'm going to pass some questions. I'm going to ask all the members of the panel one by one, but they have also their own some presentation regarding their own institution. First of all, based on your technical areas of expertise, I think you are seismologists. How do you see the current capability of the International Monitoring System networks and its technologies to detect nuclear explosions? And also, if possible, describe what capabilities currently work well, which technology maybe you can also interpret, and what technology areas are in the need of development and improvement for international monitoring system.
Okay. I will talk as a seismologist, and I will start from an old story. In 1972, Japan Meteorological Agency made a report, collection of seismograms on a nuclear test in Amuchitoka Island, conducted by U.S. on 7th November 1971. The nuclear yield was about 5 megatons, which was the largest level of the underground nuclear tests in the world. And the seismic waves were recorded at many JMS stations in Japan from Hokkaido to Okinawa. And this is one example of the seismogram observed at Tokachidake Mountain in Hokkaido. At that time, the seismic waves were recorded on papers. And after about 50 years past, waveform data from IMS stations in the world is collected in real time. And we can get information about hypercenters through CTBTO's analysis very quickly. And I think CTBTO's detection capability by seismic waves is very good. The recent nuclear tests by North Korea could be detected very quickly by CTBTO's analysis. And the error ellipse of the epicenters is getting smaller with the passing of the years due to the increase of the seismic stations. However, I think the new technology should be used for IMS technology because more than 20 years has passed since the treaty was adopted. Especially data transmission rate has been dramatically improved. And I think this will exceed the provision of the treaty, and discussions are needed by member states. But I think theoretically I can say that using data from other worldwide seismic observation network, for example, IRIS, and national network operated by each countries will increase the accuracy of detection, the hypocenter detection, and lower the magnitude threshold for detection further. And real-time transmission of continuous waveform data from AS will increase if the data is used at the first time of the analysis. The detection capability will increase. In addition, using AI and deep learning for analysis will help reduce the burden of analysis by IDC analysts and ensure the quality of analysis. And if the technology is fed back to NDCs, it will be benefits to the member states. This is my opinion.
Thank you very much, Noriko-san. These are all really very nice proposal to us, but any of the member states or the national data centers can get the data from the other seismological network like IRIS, WWSS, and USGS, and also they can include the data from in their own event location. It's free, and also we can encourage them to do that. But IDC only get data from international monitoring system, which authenticated data should be used now for the event detection for our organization. But all the NDC can get the data from the other network, and they can include the data from the data which they are getting from CTBTO. And also you can compile the data and make the event location together with that. But for the IDC, now in time being, we have been, IMS only have been pumping the data to IDC for event location. This is that. Thank you very much for your nice words, for the getting the small error ellipse for the location of the DPRK event. Yes, we are getting really master on for the location and spending a lot of time and effort to improve our modeling also. Thank you very much. And the same question I'm going to ask you, Johnson. I don't know if you get this, that one, yes.
Certainly. So in my case, I want to, the question is quite broad, but what I want to do is try and somehow confine it to borehole instrumentation, which is where I also specialize, in that the existing IMS stations work perfectly well for what they've been designed for. of which some of the stations are borehole and most of them are surface seismic stations. In this case, what seems to be happening is that since I started my work with seismometers, the background noise in different parts of the world seems to be continuously changing. Some increases, majority of them have been increasing in terms of interfering signals, and some areas they seem to be actually reducing, which is in fact quite rare. But the important thing about increased background noise is that the ability for the stations to detect small signals clearly diminishes as the background noise increases. Compared to the surface stations, the borehole instrumentation should really be independent of surface background noise. And for that reason, I'm advocating that maybe in future some of the surface stations which are possibly suffering from background noise interference could be converted to be boreholes. Now there are particularly 3 to 4 sources of background noise, such as power generating windmills. And this was seen in EKA in England, where there's so many windmills around the seismic stations that the government had to put actually embargo on building windmills close proximity to the station. That's one area. Heavy industry and machinery certainly is interfering with the surface stations, and that's for sure. And the population settlement. When I first went to Albuquerque Seismological Laboratory, the station had very, very low noise, particularly at high frequencies. But over the years, as the city grew bigger and bigger, it appears as if the background noise have increased substantially. And more importantly, the changing environment is certainly affecting, I think, the surface stations. So virtually, as it's impossible to isolate such noise sources, the only possible way of improving the stations would be, and also ensuring that the capability of detection continues to be what it is to use borehole stations. I think it's no good requesting to improve detection capability of seismic stations, but ignore the important interfering factors. And the same infrastructure, however, can be used without unnecessarily spending more funds on the stations, but just adding simply installing boreholes at the same sites. And this could be done quite easily, especially since so much of the borehole technology has improved. Drilling machines are so much easier to find and to source, and also, of course, they're substantially more accurate and speedy in terms of being able to drill boreholes. And with that, of course, comes the cost of drilling, and I think has substantially reduced compared to maybe 10 years ago. So it is a potential way and a possible way to sustain the detection capability of the stations as they are. Now, I can give you some examples of how the improved noise can be improved. How do I do this? Do I just, next one. In that as with depth, as we all know, and these are not my instruments or the instruments that I've been involved with, but substantially improves. And these are from mines in Germany, where the surface stations have been compared to sensors at 400 meters depth mines. And you can see how improvement can be achieved substantially. And the same thing can be achieved by drilling boreholes at the stations or the seismic stations that currently is available. And again, whether the weather conditions, whether it's windy or quiet, the actual improvement of signal-to-noise ratio is constant, meaning that you have reliable station monitoring continuously. That was in the short period that I just showed you in mines, but in the same way, from again a different reference, and this was done in 1995, where the long period information or long period signals for boreholes or for mines can be substantially better than surface stations. Now, in this case, we're not 100% sure about the capability of the instruments used, because the instruments themselves certainly can introduce noise depending on how quiet the sensors are. So from moving from here, in this case, this is an installation which is seismically active, very close to fault line, maybe 300 meters from a fault line, where the borehole is at 150 meters deep, and the borehole casing and the drilling was conducted whilst I was there. I was involved in drilling the borehole and installing the sensor. That surface instrument, which is a perfectly good instrument to comparison to borehole at long periods, one can see the huge advantages. And the suggestion that the existing vaults could be used for boreholes is also, there's an example of it, which was done whilst I was doing my PhD in England, and Blackness Seismological Center, where the vault was built many years ago in 1960s. But in 1978, we've decided to install a borehole, and the borehole was drilled right through the top of the vault, through the pier in the vault, and 80-meter borehole was drilled, and it's a fantastic station in terms of detecting signals. Whilst the weather conditions can vary substantially in England, the borehole instrumentation produces reliable data. So it's the suggestion that without unnecessary expenditure, unnecessary investment, one can really upgrade the stations with similar broadband instruments and improve the detection ability of the sensors. In the next question, I will actually come and discuss about the types of instrument, the advantages of different types of instruments which could be considered for such application. Mara, thank you.
Is it okay? Yeah, thank you very much, Johnson, for your proposal. It's a very nice proposal. I already know signal-to-noise ratio is very important to produce, accuse the good quality of data. We have been modernizing also the IMS network time to time, recapitalizing some station infrastructure, but in the same time, we have to consider also financial impacts of the changing the station infrastructure from the surface instrument to the borehole. But we always consider to pass to the borehole if, of course, if the existing system is just ending its lifetime of the instruments. We do consider always borehole, and we have 28 primary seismic stations as borehole, and total 45 if we add the auxiliary seismic station together. But I already know many of the cities is expanding itself, and noise, background noise getting high. Time to time we have to make the new noise survey to understand the background noise and also find the solution for that. But it's very interesting. In Blackness, you already installed the borehole in the same vault.
Yes.
And digging the 80 meter.
Yes.
It's very interesting, yes. I don't know if, I'm not sure if IMS infrastructure also can be improved like that way, because many of the vault is different in very remotely located stations place. It's very challenging place. We cannot say only one thing to hold for whole IMS network. Thank you very much. We will consider this. Thank you. And Valeria.
Well, as said before, IMS technologies used to detect nuclear explosion work fine, and stations are operational. And IMS seismic and infrasound networks prove their capability at DPRK nuclear test in 2017. And I will talk on the basis of my experience as a station operator of 24 IMS stations. And so we talk about operation of station and about data availability of the station. I think it's important to be efficient using maintenance. It means that spare parts of critical equipment must be present at each station. Spare quantity must be defined according to accessibility of each station, because we cannot be sure of delivery time from one year to another one, in particular in remote countries. Those equipment must be tested on a yearly basis, and the most effective solution is to replace the operational equipment by the spare part every year. Switching equipment benefits is a feedback of our own experience. It gives the guarantee that the spare part works fine when we need it. And then I want to focus on radionuclide stations and detectors. Detectors are very sophisticated instruments that require specific skills to manage it. And when the local operator of a station replaces such equipment, it takes too long time to configure properly the new one. So for that specific equipment, it's important to have a hot spare running on the station and already configured and monitored every day, like the operational one. And of course, PTS must implement processing of files coming from that equipment to be sure it works fine. Regarding seismic and infrasound technologies, we must go further on data quality insurance. For infrasound domain, this domain is relatively unknown, and scientists have been working for only 30 years. Infrasound domain is between static pressure and dynamic pressure domains, and those domains are well known and have their own calibration capability. It's not the case for infrasound domain. That means that right now we cannot ensure full trustworthiness of data acquired by CTBT stations, because there's no traceability of the measure to international standards of unit, and because of lack of primary standard for infrasound. So thanks to the work and actions conducted by PTS, experts on BIPM, an international committee in meteorology with experts in meteorology, BIPM have taken this issue up and include CTBTO needs in their roadmap. And at the same time, an acoustic pressure standard and associated calibration methods for infrasound sensors down to 0.1 Hertz are under development. And then this new standard will be proposed for validation by BIPM in order to declare it as a national standard. And for seismic domain, if vibration standards exist, their regular use for formal calibration of seismic stations is not yet in this practice. So we need to introduce their regular use for confidence in measurement for CTBTO as well as for other seismic stations, even if it has a cost. So I think that metrology for seismic and infrasound domain is the most important point to work for the next decade. And radionuclide part of EMS is clearly in advance on confidence in measurement.
Okay, Valerie, thank you very much for your very valuable proposals. I may say traceability is very important for all four technologies. I know already infrasound technology is the new one, and it has some lack of information on the traceability, but however, PTS is working with some member states' national laboratories to develop the traceability on infrasound technology. This is good. One step we have been taking. And for the redundancy of the radionuclide stations also, I can say radionuclide detectors recent years are improving, a bit improving. However, not 100% enough for their improvement. But redundancy is good solution, but not always also we cannot say. But thank you very much. I get all notes of your criticism. Yes, Roberto.
Once again, thank you. As I said before, since I am a Navy officer and a policy in science and technology researcher, my views will focus in these two arenas, and I hope it will enrich the discussions. As a Navy member, I would like to firstly address the breakthrough finding of Argentinian submarine San Juan. The vessel last contact was approximately at 7:30 a.m. on 15 November 2017, at which point her captain confirmed that the crew were well. However, for some reason, the submarine disappeared. Without hope, the Navy stopped its rescue mission 2 weeks just after that. Nevertheless, CTBT came to the rescue. And in accordance to BBC News, 8 days after the submarine vanished, CTBT said that they had detected a noise a few hours after the submarine disappearance, as is shown in the slide. Thanks to that particular pinpointed position, as you can see in the left-hand side of the slide, the submarine was found 800 meters below the surface of the Atlantic Ocean. The IMS, as you already know, was not built for that purpose, but illustrates very well my first point as policy researcher. Recent discussions in this very same conference about the use of the information provided by the IMS in the form of civil applications might provide extraordinary opportunities for the CTBTO. In spite of the primordial mission of the organism, it is essential to recognize the importance of the vast information gathered that provides answers to unique and unanticipated behaviors, not only on the Earth crust. And the pressure is to become more involved in fields not only concerned to geology and seismology and so on of the sort, creating progressive and additional interdepartmental research and development units. Bearing this in mind, I would like to point out that the criteria stating CTBTOs for technologies might be constraining, just a bit. As a researcher in policy research in science and technology, I would suggest picturing CTBTO's missions supported by 4 pillars developed by hundreds of technology that are associated to form a well and a strong methodology that fulfill the mission. However, I would suggest that the CTBTO methodology is to build a system from the ground up, like a cathedral. This frame of reference might help later when talking about disruptive technologies. I must add that the whole intent of CTBTO is built on the basis of Thomas Hobbes' Homo homini lupus, that is, man is wolf to man. That is to say, nuclear energy with destructive ends was once used, and it is possible that it happens again, because apparently it is in our nature. We must insist that the human race is better and we can be and do better, and use the pillars of the CTBTO shown in the image to build an exceptional world of application for human development that is CTBTO spin-off technologies, as in NASA. It means that it's a technology, the base of the whole methodology. And so we can confront any change in the near future. This recommendation is based on Leiderdorff and Ecovic's work of the triple helix of innovation, stating the indispensable increase of interactions between universities, governments, and industry. Setting forth sustainable objective very clear. In order to accomplish this goal, I do recommend sailing through the seas of technology foresight or perspective, and as created by the University of Manchester in 1990s, and use the fundamental method of using CTBTO's 4 pillars in detailed spin-off technologies. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Okay, I get the notes. More than technically, but also philosophically, many different components you gave us. And I'm just passing to the second question. Then we'll search what technological and sustainability advances would you recommend to be implemented into the international monitoring system within the midterm time frame of the next several years? And also include the discussion of the potential beneficial impact of any recommendations for this. Yes, please.
I think one idea is to use. Oh, yes. Yeah. Okay. I think one idea to use open data from other worldwide seismic observation network and national network supplementary. Even if some PS and AS stations were down, using such data, we can minimize the influence to the analysis results. And another idea is enhancement of the value of IMS by making IMS data public and promoting civil use further. This will increase the momentum for keeping the IMS for a long time. And if it becomes easier to use the data for disaster prevention, the more human lives will be saved. And in addition, self-diagnosis with a program using AI without humans' periodic inspection will decrease the inspection cost. Moreover, this is not a technical issue, but I think making regarding communication network and analysis system, by using general ones rather than special ones, the operation costs and the maintenance costs will be reduced. And and this is not a technical issue, but I think making official fund for maintenance of AS with cooperation with member states would be effective, because maintenance costs for maintenance to AS is too heavy for many host countries. These are my ideas.
Thank you very much, Noriko, for your proposals. I just try to answer you, but for the enhancement of the value of the IMS, making the IMS data public, that one we have already, IDC have BIDEC, and also any member states can reach and access the data and can use it. And for the self-diagnosis program, using also, we do develop the self-diagnosis SOH, state of health of all 4 technologies, not only for seismic. It's under development also, not operational yet, but under development. Using general communication network, I may ask you maybe, how do you use in Japan the communication way? There should be any member states have their own communication system For the
We are
data
using
usage, yeah.
internet networks. I think the CTBTO is using VSAT. the
VSAT, satellite-based, yes.
It's very
Yes.
cost is very high, it's better to use the cheaper one, the general technique, I think.
I understand. We have been collecting, accusing the data, more than 89 countries and different member states and different kind of data, not only from atmosphere or Earth, but also under the sea, and also some sensitivity and authentication of the data, and to transmit the data from the site to the countries and the Vienna is very important and should be secure way. It's understandable for me, and we have been using very special communication way. But thank you for your proposal. Maybe it's cheap, but authentication also more important for CTBTO. For the auxiliary seismic station, member states only provide the establishment and the establishment fund for these stations, but the maintenance should be borne from the countries which locate the stations. This is the treaty rules also. Thank you very much. Okay, Johnson.
Okay, so I mentioned or stressed the fact that maybe some of the surface stations could be converted to be borehole, and with that comes with the thank you. With that comes with the requirement, possibly requirement of a new type of borehole instruments. That is because there hasn't really been a particularly strenuous requirement from borehole instruments. And what I mean by that is that what has been out there as broadband sensor has been considered to be, let's say, a frequency response up to initially 10 hertz and then went up to 50 hertz. But it is certainly the case that the requirements for some of the IMS stations of frequency response and noise detection could be as high as 100 hertz. There has been discussions about such instrumentation. In a similar way, in the long period, the requirements from borehole instruments would be more stringent in that because the environment is quieter, the sensors need to follow a similar specification. And to achieve that, there are, without going into many details, there are one or two important factors, and these factors really come through all the experience one has achieved, or all the experience that one has seen over the years, in that the borehole instruments used should be gimbaled, in that the sensor should not be responsive to a local ground tilt, and its transfer characteristics should be in 6 degrees of freedom, completely eliminated, in that it doesn't actually, the sensor only responds in 1 degree of freedom. And I think many of the borehole instrumentation doesn't actually have strenuous specification on it, other than, as I say, there are some numbers which have been discussed, but no one has really completely established what those numbers mean as far as sensor noise, the installation site noise, and how it manifests itself as being a good or a reasonable station. So the suggestion is that the sensor should be gimbaled to a high degree of accuracy. I think is simply will be a major requirement. The second thing is that the broadband sensor response need not be limited to what it is currently, simply because broadband means broadband, so one need not be unnecessarily filtering the output of the instruments to, for whatever reason, and limit the response of the sensor. And similarly, besides the response, the noise performance of the instruments at high frequencies should be improved, and there is no reason why that shouldn't be the case. And these are, I think, not only just simply wish lists, but that they are achievable requirements that the CTBTO crowd can set as important requirement for future installations. And further to that, because we've been talking about boreholes, the actual borehole drilling methods needs to be considered and needs to be proceduralized in such a way that the environment that the instruments are installed within a borehole are sufficiently quiet. And there are various ways of achieving this. And this is, without again going into detail, but borehole drilling, the casing requirements, the grouting methods, how the grouting is actually carried out, and what its methodology, how it manifests itself as far as the station is concerned. And one thing I would insist, I think, is that the borehole should be completely free of fluid, meaning the local water just completely empty. And with that comes one further requirement to really make the stations what I would call highly desirable stations that operate for during every season, is to actually evacuate the borehole of air in such a way that the instruments sit inside a vacuum tube, as some of the surface sensors are actually installed with. So those are the what I would call the recommendations to implement IMS seismic stations, which will certainly have a much better detection capability.
Thank you very much, Johnson. You had many proposals, but we already know the borehole drilling, borehole installation always improve the frequency response and the other signal to noise ratio also. I hope one day we will have all these things, but also I wonder if you propose the survey to understand the bedrock of the borehole station when we drill them, because we already almost just having the water in the borehole side. This is also a problem, but also the water tap is changing now because of the global changing and different things. Then how do you think about this?
Well, yes. So I think the requirement for a casing or the requirement for a borehole without fluid in it sounds rather stringent, but it is achievable. Certainly, some of the most difficult sites within the world, there's an installation of a borehole with reasonable technology of installation and equipment, that one can achieve boreholes with free of fluid. And the reason for it is very simple. Fluid has higher density than air, and convection within a borehole tends to upset an instrument because it effectively moves the instrument, the convection, not only air but the fluid. For that reason, it makes sense to remove the fluid. And the next phase is to actually completely evacuated. While certainly I understand, Nurjan, that there are methodologies currently established, but maybe they could be looked at in a little bit more in detail and ensure that all sites and all parts of the world have virtually identical boreholes. But that's a very simple, not only recommendation, but the experience that I have had over the years of how one improves detection capability of instruments in boreholes.
Yes. Yeah. The water evacuation technology should be improved also in the same time the borehole.
Yes, yes.
Okay, thank you. And Valeria,
there's the gadget.
Okay, I will talk about from my station operator point of view. Right now, we live in a connected world, and all equipments with electronic embedded provides information on of its state of health. So I think the IMS network could be more efficient if we could have precise information of state of health of all equipments involved in our stations. So Nagios is a tool that monitors IT equipment, including application, hardwares like computers, like switches, services, network, and so on. Nagios is now a well-known standard, and all manufacturers in IT equipment provide specific probes. Probes are a small piece of software that return information to monitor equipment and alert operator when things go wrong. And we must take advantage of this well-known standard for our IMS station and ask manufacturers of non-IT equipment and developers of software used in our station to provide Nagios probe in order to extend our scope of equipment and processes monitored, leading to get and use, for example, information about solar controllers, digitizers, GPS reception, network, and so on. For example, last year we faced to an interruption of data sent from hydroacoustic HA4 station at Crozet. Unfortunately, the equipment and computer used at that station are not monitored, and this is very specific equipment. And Crozet, as you know, Crozet Island is very far, so it was very difficult for us. It took 2 days of a loss of data, 2 days to solve the problem. If we had complete state of health information of all equipments involved, we could at a glance have seen that data were received from hydrophones on the station locally, but were not sent out. The loss of data would have been reduced to maybe a few tens of minutes. To go further, I need to go to the source of the problem. In fact, it was a problem with a specific buffer on the SSI computer. This buffer is used only for hydroacoustic station. This buffer was full. If Nagios probes were available to monitor the SSI software, we would have configured Nagios to send an alert when the filling level of this buffer exceeds a threshold. And thanks to that alert, we could have done a preventive operation instead of a curative one with no impact on data availability. So all information sent by equipments are received in a monitoring room, and this detailed information allows a complete analysis on proper diagnosis of a failure, enabling to do the right action remotely, and if needed, give correct instruction for intervention by a local operator. So finally, we will be more efficient to monitor and maintain the network and obtain better data availability, in particular for isolated stations. And to go further, since we'll receive a lot of state of health data from station, we could be able to implement artificial intelligence locally with the capability to diagnose a problem and automatically solve it without human intervention for most part of failures. And thus, artificial intelligence could increase data availability and reduce cost of maintenance. That's all.
Thank you, Valerie, for your very important proposals. As I said before, we have been trying to improve our state of health monitoring of the station. It's very critical to run the station for us. Continuously improving, but not only for seismic, but for the other technologies also, we have been improving. Thank you very much. Roberto?
Thank you once again. Opinions, said the philosopher, are like casting shadows. Everyone has one when facing light, knowledge. Nevertheless, human rather than technological view might help in suggesting further and future advances in IMS. On Monday, Professor Matt Whelan made an analogy with the best of Hamilton's Grand Prix cars being built up and put away in a room for 25 years and pretended it will turn on after that time. What I do suggest is exactly the opposite, since our IMS is actually locked in a vault or in a borehole, but is up and running after 20 years of continuous operation and currently monitoring nuclear explosions. However, we could all agree that the IMS does accomplish much more than that, as the submarine case demonstrates. So our Ferrari, our IMS, is reliable and very capable. What we need, I think, in order to focus in common goals is make use of gathering like this with exceptional people like you to produce an extensive list of actual capabilities, strengths, and correlate them all up with future threats for the next 30 to 40 years, and including them opportunities, and write them up carefully together. Afterward, the method suggests the enunciation of courses of action to CTBTO, considering two relevant frames of reference. The first is the benefits to a wider population around the world, objective which is, I think, paramount. And second, a massive undertaking of the triple helix for innovation actors, that is, universities, industries, and of course, governments. And for instance, talking about the future, wouldn't it be fascinated if CTBTO make a breakthrough in earthquake forecasting? Is that mad? And how many lives could be saved? Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Roberto. It's very interesting, really. Even we did not enter into force, but we have not only been monitoring the nuclear test, nuclear explosion around, but also we do record almost everything in the world. And more than 300 stations and located at the near 90 countries, and really very cutting-edge technology used for the station. We have been almost monitoring, recording everything in the world, and time to time also we do help to the civil humanities regarding to the disaster of the earthquake, and also providing the data for tsunami warning center for the early issuance of the tsunami messages during the big tsunamis. Thank you very much for your role assessment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Then the third question, I just would like to ask you very fast, because we have only 20 minutes for also questions from the audience. If you consider the mid to long-term time frame, and we would like to discuss the example of what you may see as a disruptive or game-changing technologies into the IMS. Do you have any? Yes.
Could you show my presentation? Thank you. This one. I think it's better to introduce satellite surveillance into IMS. We can get detailed information about where and what happened with more accuracy by using SAR interferometry. This shows SAR interferometry analyzed by Geospatial Information Authority of Japan, GSI. And at about the earthquake occurred in Kumamoto in western Japan in 2016. The maximum magnitude was 7.3 in JMA magnitude. And the interference stripes show large cluster deformation areas. And the GSI estimated the focal the location and the size of the source faults by using these interference stripes and the GPS data. And it's not possible with the current technology, but if technology is advanced, there is a possibility to detect nuclear tests by neutrinos. A neutrino is an elemental particle, and it can penetrate the Earth, so we can detect them from far away. So we can estimate their emission source by using multiple detectors. In Japan, we have the world's largest underground neutrino detector, the Super Kamiya Kande. But unfortunately, with current technology, we cannot detect the small amount of neutrinos produced by the nuclear tests. And we have to, we should develop the methods to remove the noises from reactor facilities and the sun. But it would be possible in the future, I think. These are my ideas.
Very interesting. Actually, synthetic aperture radar images is important to monitor the deformation and the displacement, especially caused by nuclear explosion, but also for the, even now, scientists using these images, this data, to monitor the landslide and also make the earthquake rupture propagation modeling. No any modeling now is worthy without SAR, SAR interferometry data. As far as I know, as a scientist, I know this one. It would be good, of course, to understand in the centimeter base measurement after the nuclear test, but it may be discussable after entry into force of the CTBTO. And now we have been also discussing academically, we can discuss and we can get all this proposal from the member states. And we are also open, welcome all the idea and all the modeling if member states use this data, this image during the DPRK and other DPRK event and merge the CTBTO data. And if they present us their own results, and if we see all these things is welcome for us, and we may have some debate and discussion to understand the usage and the benefit of this this aperture data for the nuclear test event location. Thank you for this. This is important. Yes, Johnson.
Okay, well, so what's the game changer? In the case of seismic instrumentation, one could consider that the game changer might be rather difficult, but I would say the game changer or the most important aspect of the IMS stations, if they were to be able to monitor under all conditions, storm, under all weather conditions, the same signal-to-noise ratio, same detectivity capability, then that would be, I think, a remarkable additional achievement to what CTBTO is currently doing. Thank you.
Environmental.
Yeah.
Yes, we have some cooperation with the WHMO. Maybe Valerie can continue with that.
Yes, as told before, IMS network work fine. works fine, but we can improve its efficiency to detect and get better characterization of nuclear explosion. If we have a better knowledge of the atmosphere, we will have a better understanding of IS, infrasound propagation, or radionuclide elements transportation after nuclear explosion. For example, for infrasound network, because of the variability of the atmosphere due to gravity waves or stratospheric warming that disrupt infrasound propagation, we get uncertainties in infrasound monitoring. It's why we must adapt the IMS stations to welcome specific instrumentation for a short campaign or for a longer time. So it can be, for example, LIDARs or meteor radars, for example, in order to measure temperature and the wind profiles with high resolution in altitude and in time. Those measurements will help to create a high precision model of propagation and then reduce uncertainties in infrasound propagation. And regarding seismic technology, adding rotational sensors close to traditional sensors would help to have a characterization of the seismic waves and could better separate the different phases of the signals. So, thank you very much.
Yeah, I thank you, Valerie. Roberto, do you have any game-changing technologies proposal for IMS?
Close enough, I think. Close enough. So, we're talking about disruptive technologies, and these disruptive technologies come to life actually when a dominant design shifts radically. And the concept of dominant design, as stated by Giovanni Dossi and Richard Nelson, suggests that technology grows gradually, despite the name. However, and once again, if the panorama of 4 pillars is used instead of 4 technologies, and keeping in mind CTBTO's mission, the shift might come if we add another pillar. For instance, satellite imagery, as already stated, which is already being used for volcano monitoring, hydrology, geology, and soils, just to mention one. Having stated the fact, I cannot stress enough the undertaking, or the required undertaking of CTBTO technology foresight exercise that could help greatly to have scientifically speaking answers to these questions. And the most likely developments in the future, that is 20 to 30 years from now, including the spin-off technologies that have grown within the limit of this great organization. In this exercise, producers and users of science and technology must work together to develop a common vision of the future. Thank you very much.
I thank you very much, Roberto. If you just talk about only your region and around the Caribbean and Venezuelan, what can you say for that? What you need to have? What kind of technologies also?
What kind of technology?
Yes.
I think,
yes.
Well, without having data, I could only provide an opinion. But I think, once again, if we, instead of using the 4 technologies that is so well been built up over 20 years, probably we think that some of them are in peril, could be changed for something else. The last 20, 30 years give us an answer that it is not the case. However, emerging technologies are coming. And I think as well that CTBTO needs resources, financial resources. And the spin-off technology, I mean, the base of the cathedral, can provide the CTBTO with incomes not foreseen before.
I see, I understand. Thank you very much for all the panelists for your really valuable proposals regarding our system and also our program, our software and tools to implement the international monitoring system to develop and enhance its monitoring and running capabilities. And I took all of them as a note and will try to again construct some discussion inside the IMS. And I would like to open the floor for the audience. If you have any question, you can also text me via the question and answer.
More questions here.
You have already.
No.
Is this yours?
This is a program.
Yeah, I open it. Then maybe now it can.
Finishing the day.
Say that again.
People speaking.
You think so?
This is our
I think they're alive.
Yes, this is yours. Yeah.
And no questions
Do
here.
you have any? IMS staff also can ask.
Yes, I would like to ask Dr. Kamiya
Yeah.
how she envisions INSAR studies as part of the IMS. I just gave a presentation a few minutes ago proposing that it be used, but for OSI, where you can actually select a distinct area that you can then use INSAR and deformation of the ground that comes from INSAR studies to guide the OSI inspection. But I would like to know how you envision it as part of the IMS, being such a global task that the IMS has.
At the first step, we need the detection, the location of the hypercenter by seismic waves. After that, we can analyze the INSAR by using the satellite data, and the result will be used for OSI technology, OSI inspection, on-site inspection, I think. But yeah, so we need the first step, we need hypercenter for the first step, I think.
Can I complementary tell something? Actually, SAR data we can get only from European maybe space agency or some Army's laboratories of the national laboratories of some countries. Then maybe she may propose us to establish the new maybe satellite imagery database or some monitoring system. It's also not easy to decide to get the satellite image from somewhere. Are there any other questions? No? Okay. Is it? Okay. No, any questions? You have some questions, he says.
No?
If there is no any question more, then I'm closing the panel. Thank you very much again, all the members of the panel, for your contribution and proposals. Thank you.